Hey, welcome back to STR Unfiltered. I am Bill Faeth, founder of Build Short Term Rental Wealth, and your host on today's podcast. This is the no bullshit podcast about literally everything short term rental, real estate investing. And I'm really excited today. I have an OG for those of you that are my age or older, like 50 and almost elderly. That means original gangster. For all you Biggie and Tupac fans, you guys know what I'm throwing down today. So I've got Emile Sahkel, who is the founder of Pricing by Mira. And he kind of had his breakout at the SDR Wealth Conference. For those of you that aren't in my mastermind, we knew what he was doing. This is kind of a Kenny Bedwell story. You know, he launched his company, mastermind members were using him, kind of going through the beta testing, getting all the feathers ruffled. So that way, when he came to market, he's ready to go. And he is actually the two biggest properties that I have, these two properties in the Outer Banks, he is doing revenue management for those two properties for me as well. And at some point, I will eventually turn over my entire portfolio to him because I'm a big believer that if revenue management or marketing, the two most important things to move the needle in your investing career in short term rentals, and that's why I outperform AirDNA by such a high percentage, that 90th percentile, it's these two things. But a lot of you go and invest and then you want to cut your teeth and you want to learn. And I've told a lot of people if you're going to, not put in the time, and revenue management is not just about setting up your dynamic pricing tool and forgetting about it. I think Emil will talk about this a little bit today. He's in there doing manual adjustments even on a daily basis. I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you and say that I do that every single day. I used to do it 3 or 4 times a week. I'm doing it 2 to 3 times a week when I have time, and I'm gonna promise you that is not good enough anymore because the gold rush of COVID is over. The 2 things you need to focus on is revenue management and marketing to take your properties or property to the next level. So let's dive in. Let me introduce you to my good friend, Emile Sahkel. Emile, how are you today, buddy?
Doing fantastic, Bill. It's an absolute pleasure sitting here chit-chatting. And, every time this happens with you and I, it's either on a couch in one of our mastermind meetings or behind the scenes. So it's nice to come to the public and give out some golden nuggets today.
Yeah, but you were I'm supposed to have wine and you should have bourbon or wine or something. We'll do that at the new mansion down in Smith Lake in a couple of weeks. You're coming, right?
And as of now, I am expecting my third girl, which could be any day now, leading up into August. So it all comes down
Well,
to the
you go grab Sarah and let's tell her to pop that thing out. You got to make it so you can do a revenue management session there.
I tell her we need to walk up and down the stairs the next couple days to make some magic happen. So we'll see what happens.
Exactly. Cool. Awesome. So why don't you kind of do your own introduction because there's a lot of people that listen that probably don't know who you are and especially if they weren't at the STR Wealth Conference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, a good short, 3.5 years ago now, I started to think about opportunities for myself and for my family to get out of W-2. I have a healthcare background, anesthesia background. I constantly engage in real estate podcast and engage in real estate books and mastermind, seeking for that right mastermind. So back about 3.5 years ago, I've reached the realm of becoming a chief CRNA,
What's a
in a
CRNA?
certified registered nurse anesthesiologist. And this was here in the Hill Country in Texas. 12 weeks vacation, maxed out on salary. And while everybody around me has a tendency to think that I've reached a level of success, I have this inner being, inner self, struggle where I felt stagnant. I felt like I was no longer growing. I felt like I had made it to the top in my industry, but still felt super bored, and far from financially free. And I felt like I was so much more capable. Like a lot of us entrepreneurs, we're always striving, we're always hungry, we're always trying to find what that specific gift is that we have. And as humbling as healthcare has been, as much as I love the profession in anesthesia, it just wasn't cutting it for me. I would go to bed and I would wake up not being fulfilled. So that started the journey of conversating with Sarah. And, back when Sarah and I got married, we quickly dove into attending these real estate courses. We started with fortune builders and started with, Airbnb with flip phone photos in Houston, Texas that quickly got shut down by an HOA to investing in a long-term rental. And a year later, coming into this situation where I was at with my current position, quickly acknowledging and realizing that it was not good enough for myself, and the type of future that I needed to have for myself and for my family. So I started seeking, started praying, started reaching out, started talking to Sarah about what I really needed for myself. And the more we talked, the more Facebook started to listen and came about, Bill Faeth with Build Short-Term Rental Wealth, and that was right when you were starting your mastermind. So I believe I was probably the second person that you interviewed and brought into your original mastermind group. And at the time,
Justin Shaner was number one, and you and Sarah were number two out of the 15.
yep, absolutely, and there was no hesitation. It was a small financial commitment to a much broader goal, and that was kind of the start of it all. And once we joined your mastermind group, it was, literally within probably a week you were able to accumulate the original 9. I think at the time there was 9 folks in the mastermind, and as soon as that started originating, you started.
15, including couples. But if you remember, I kicked the two brothers out because they violated the no asshole policy after about two virtual meetings.
I wonder what the attrition rate is nowadays for the assholes. We'd have to calculate and see
I've
what y'all
only
had.
had to kick out, I think, 3 assholes in 3.5 years.
That's
Well,
not
you
too
know
bad.
who one of the others is.
I do. That's not too bad.
So, Emil, me and you got together in the mastermind, and then you and Sarah and Lori actually bought 2 houses, cottages, right? So I was here, Lori was my neighbor, and then I think there was a open property and then your property all in the same neighborhood. And I very distinctly remember that was right before, I think it was before the first Gulf Shores Master in-person meeting. So we'd had like 2 virtuals, and it was the first time I met you and Lori. And I just want everybody to understand this was late February, early March of 2020, and you and Sarah knew fucking nothing at all, nothing. And now you've not only become a very, very accomplished owner, you have put partnerships together. You have built a co-hosting business, and you've built probably one of the top 5 revenue management companies just in the last 6 to 7 months, 9 months probably, in the industry. So I think that's really a testimony to, 1, your commitment to execution, learning, self-development, but also to everybody else that you've also been doing this while you've been an anesthesiologist and a father, right? And helping your wife and her real estate journey and her business in multiple states. So it can be done. This isn't a 10 or a 15-year process if you really jump in, right?
Absolutely not. And it is going to vary from person to person, from W2 to W2. For me personally, given the profession that I had to figure out how to bridge out of these 24-hour shifts, out of the game of, my time commitment for the hospital to get into real estate. So, everybody, we all have frustrations, we all have fatigue, we all have burnout with our W2s, but we all have different financial means and backbone and expenses to handle on the back end. So, for me, I really needed to feel that stability and bridge out of anesthesia much slower. I say slower, but looking back, it happened pretty quickly. So as of April this year, I am officially part time, which equates to about 5 to 6 days a month, just to maintain my license. And outside of those 5 to 6 shifts, I am full time with revenue management, and co-hosting. So it's been an absolute journey, enjoy and have enjoyed every bit of the process along the way.
So, I mean, I'm proud of you. I'm proud to have you and Sarah as a friend, and I love to watch the journey that you're on. And just for those of you that are listening, Emil is my inner circle revenue management coach as well. And as I said earlier, he also does revenue management for my 2 largest properties in the Outer Banks that I have a partner with there. So, Emil, I kind of want to shift gears for a second, and actually, I want to stay real quick on the Outer Banks properties because I think a lot of people probably would have steered away from. Do you remember the first conversation that we had? I said these things need to do $500,000 a year in revenue. And so one of the things that I did is I try to slow down a little bit where while you're ramping up, is I had Emil take over revenue management. Another one of my mastermind members and my co-hosting and technology coach in the inner circle, Jose Cornejo, is doing the co-hosting. And the goal was to do $500,000 each. Really, I think you kind of reined me back to like 450,000 each, so 900,000 between the two properties. And I saw your report that you sent me last week, and Jose, I think, has us pegged after just about it was after the conference, so it's probably only been about 4 months. I think we've done $647,000 in revenue, in bookings and realized revenue in the first 4 months. So we are about, I think, 21% ahead, of what our annualized revenue should be. So that's something that I think is really gonna lead into the first question. I know you've had a couple of clients you and I have discussed as every other revenue manager that, has decided to stop because they come in and they expect everything to kick in immediately, Emil, and that doesn't happen, right? I mean, even for us with these two super high demand, super mega properties that are beachfront, Bria spent $400,000, 500,000 on each of them. They're perfect. It still took a good 90, 120 days, before we could even dream. And I think this week, or maybe it was last week, we had our first like 22 or $26,000 booking. We had to inch our way into this. Why does it not happen overnight? Why does it take so much time when everybody else thinks they can just set up price labs, adjust their pricing, and they're just going to get premium rates?
Yeah, yeah, Bill. Great question, and I appreciate the opportunity and handling the OBX properties. And first and foremost, you can't devalue the work that you guys did on the front end. A lot of folks still have a tendency to think, it's in the pro forma, it's in the analysis, it's in the market, but hands down, the front loaded work and design and curation of the identity that you guys have created is an absolute mandatory in order to perform in the top 1%. And
Do
I
you see a lot of people, Emil, that come in with average properties and they're expecting, super property, ADRs?
All the time, all the time. And I do break down, and we can get into the weeds of how I start to engage in base prices and build on that. But the identity of a property, Bill, you hear me talk about the three different criterias, whether it's a super property, an average or budget friendly economical property. The issue is in today's climate, if you've had an existing listing with historical information, historical data, you're still slightly at a disadvantage even though you have a buildup of reviews. So it's kind of twofold. One of the benefits I kind of look at it twofold as well with the OBX properties. I started handling revenue management for you guys, and I want to say maybe April. If you consider the lead times in that market for a 7+ bedroom, we're talking 3, 4, 5, 6 months out. So taking over.
We've already taken bookings for next summer.
And exactly that, absolutely. So considering all the factors and angles of the market, of the property, and the specific nature of when those folks are willing to pay top dollars, super super important for each property in each market, and that derives from deep dive market analysis.
Agreed. So you talk about kind of the why before the why. People are expecting, and you say super property. I want to make sure everybody understands a super property doesn't mean it's the biggest, most badass property. It means that it is designed, as Emil said, to make the highest amount of money without going over that threshold. So it's about outperforming the marketplace. And that's what we're doing right now, right? Even though we haven't hit our full stride yet, I would say that we're probably in a fast jog. We are not sprinting yet, and that's probably not gonna happen until around Christmas or January. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're definitely ahead of where I suspected, considering that we started in April. It's really interesting to see the progression and the success that we've had so quickly in that market with your property. So I'm super excited to see what 2025 has to bring, and the game and the evolution of the targets will drastically shift and change behind the scenes for us with pricing by mirror as we handle those properties. And those flourishing numbers won't be discussed with you until they start hitting, but you'll be quite pleased to see numbers
Let's use the OBX
either.
properties, Emil, as kind of the example. So you took over in April. I mean, there was plenty of nights that we were charging 3, 4, $500 a night, last minute bookings in April and even early May. I mean, it's not all $3,000 a night. So And there's one night minimums that were set up. That was one of the big takeaways. That was actually the first week of April when you were doing your revenue management teaching at the inner circle meeting and you introduced people to the one night minimums. And a lot of people, I could see their body language when you said that. And, I was one that wasn't doing that with my super properties. I was afraid to, like other people. And I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to take 3 properties and change it immediately after your session. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but I came in the next morning. I took 3 bookings on those properties and they average like 3 nights. I think people don't understand the methodology of super far out pricing, discounted pricing as we get closer to the dates, and then how the minimum nights, play into that role. So, can you kind of unpack why you would do that with this mega super property?
Yeah, no, there's so much psychology and methodology that goes in, and you're right. Coming into your properties in April, seeing a couple weeks that were vacant on the front end, we had to build traction fast. We had to build reviews fast. Given that the properties typically take 14 to 18 people, maybe up to 20 people per property. We're within a couple weeks starting revenue, and we have to fill vacancy fast. So for the sake of the portfolio, for the sake of building reviews, for the sake of the owner, building that traction and determining where the current market is at that point in time when you go live is the critical factor when you start to determine those rates. And we did get down to $400 or $500, and we do have a minimum price as low as $399 on a 7 bedroom uh, north of $3 million property mid-weeks. But what happens at the end of the month? You start to calculate your RevPal and you start to track month over month. We're hitting goal revenues, and it's not about the minimum price. It's not about the highest ADR. It's always about the RevPal, and it's about the combination of occupancy and ADR, completely removing the psychology of our understanding that because we spent so much for a property, because it's so nice, because it's beachfront, or whatever you want to feed yourself, we have this idea that a certain amount of money has to be made. We have to treat it like a business. The faster you can treat your property like a business and remove the psychology and understand the methodology behind the revenue, the higher you're going to move up the totem pole from percentage and bottom dollar.
What for those that don't know, what does RevPal stand for?
It's revenue per available listing. You'll hear RevPAR, RevPal, but specifically for the STR industry, we refer to it as revenue per available listing. It's a combination between your occupancy and your ADR. You multiply the two, and it breaks it down into the calendar days per month. So it's a little confusing for folks to understand that haven't identified that key performance indicator on a day to day basis. But as long as you're understanding what your normal occupancy is, what your normal ADR is in your market, and you're factoring both of those parameters within the realm of your revenue management, will ultimately on the back end derives and gets you that rev. But to a minimum, occupancy, ADR, understand both of those, how to manipulate it, when and however you want to fill your occupancy or maximize your ADRs, and draw that out to truly perform at the highest level.
So let's start from the kind of go back to the very beginning, based on what you just said. What if I'm into property number one, Emil, and I don't know what that average is? I don't know what my ADR should be. I don't know what my occupancy level should be. Where do I start? What do I do?
Yeah, Bill. So there's a lot of ways to start. And I tell folks, it depends on budget. There's always the manual. There is always the manual approach. Airbnb, Verbo, what are others doing? What's the enemy method? What's happening? And draw that out. What's happening this month? What's happening 12 months down the road? With similar like properties. Do that manual search, your bedroom count, your market search, your amenity search, and determine where everybody's at. Um, then you start to bring in third party platforms. You have AirDNA, you have STR Insights, you have key data. But backtracking a little bit, you have pricing tools, you have Price Labs, you have Wheelhouse. All of these different third party platforms will have ability to give you data. So starting with one, starting with two, building it out, you need at least one of them to derive data. Somebody has to have data in order to really build out a proper analysis. What I have found is I need to use a minimum of three. You have scrape data, AirDNA, STR Insights. They're providing scrape data. And some markets it's more accurate than others, depending on the size of the market, the size of the supply. Key data gives you direct source booking data from actual bookings and softwares, but the con to that is it's only as good as the inclusive criteria. How much supply has applied for key data in the market. So there's a
And
lot of
Emil,
very
isn't key data just based on, I mean, they're just property management companies. They don't have my properties, right?
correct. They're only going to provide you data. Now they will have some scrape data out there. So, but the true bulk and benefit of what key data provides is the direct source benefit, which is only going to be pulled from software systems from those that have subscribed to their services, which makes it a double-edged sword as well. So if you're in a market and you got 20% inclusion criteria, or 20% of property managers or local hosts are engaged in key data, it's a sufficient source of benchmark key performance indicators. Whereas if you've got a podunk town, and these emerging
Paducah,
markets.
Kentucky, probably not.
Exactly. So if you have data that's less than 5%, then obviously key data is not going to be, at least the direct source part of key data is not going to be the angle to search to build out your analysis. So really, identifying what you're comfortable with, finding a tool out there that you're comfortable in searching. There's no one right tool. I definitely encourage folks to build up to three, but definitely start with one or two to build out, the numbers game and what data is out there.
What are the 3 biggest mistakes you see that self-managers do with revenue management?
You know, Problem number one is they don't do it. They don't do it.
They just set up price labs and put in the low, the medium, the high, and set 3-night minimum and think they're done.
There's a lot of folks that have price labs that set a base price and seem to believe that, because of their data points, and their systems in place, and they have a tendency to think that everything is grandiose, that that's all they need. And there's a lot of folks that don't have price labs, that do manual pricing, that seem to think a certain rate across the board is all they need. There's a lot of talk and debate, about revenue management out there, about an emerging niche. Well, revenue management bill has been around for a long, long time.
Been around for 40
In
years.
in every industry, not just short-term rentals, airlines, hotels, everything around us revolves. There's this huge niche on revenue management.
I think people don't understand, Emil, that the majority of the major supermarkets revenue manage and change pricing literally on a nightly basis on their
100.
top products. Everything that we look at eye level in a grocery store, take a picture of the milk and go back over 3 or 4 weeks and just store it in an album in your phone, and you're going to see how it fluctuates.
And to tell you how granular it is, we traveled a couple weeks ago, American Airlines, to South Carolina, and I was waiting for an upgrade. Well, waiting for this upgrade, I normally get upgraded within 5 days of the reservation date, but it was a holiday weekend. It was the 4th of July. They waited up to 15 minutes before onboarding to upgrade me. That price was constantly shifting until 15 minutes. So that revenue manager was very aggressive. And they're probably that aggressive because they've had last minute bookings. And so but that's really interesting when you start to apply that to the SDR game. What is the aggression level of each owner and each operator? It varies across the board, but nonetheless, it's a revenue management game.
And I think that's something that's super important, that it was a holiday. Whoever's running that algorithm, and if they're doing manual pricing, they know the routes for the business travelers that are gonna be last minute. They track just like we have average lead time, they know the average tickets being sold, all those things. You're 100% correct. Dynamic pricing is not new, and I think one of the things that is new that people, even in our industry, I don't think understand a whole lot is price elasticity, which is a huge component of how I've maxed out, my revenue, like at Dragonfly and some of these other super high demand properties. When I can take a property that should never do more than probably $1,800 a night and be able to get a $3,500 rate or a $5,000 rate, then Emil, if I don't have price labs let me rephrase that. If you listeners or people watching on YouTube don't have Price Labs Beyond, Wheelhouse, it seems like AirDNA's got a revenue management, Rank Breeze, pretty much everybody does now. You've got Get Bestie, Future Stay. By the way, if you guys are brand new, like property number one, and you're looking for the easy button for, automated pricing, dynamic pricing, and a direct booking site directly linked through Airbnb, you might want to check out Future Stay. Just FYI. I'm a big StayFi guy for building my email list. But one of the things, Emil, that I think people don't understand is they are never going to know. Like, Gulf Shores, you own in, well, you still own in Gulf. You sold your property in Gulf Shore. You have another one there, right? So
Yep.
you
Yep.
own in Gulf Shores and Destin. And in the off season, the markets couldn't be more different with the compression events, right? You know, Destin, Florida, 30A, Miramar, they don't have the soccer fields and the places for the cheerleading competitions and these what I call micro compression events that can have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people, come into it. And I was there last December for a 4,500 person soccer tournament for 3 days. And I didn't even know that it was happening until I got the notice from my wife that, hey, we have to fly Gentry down for this college showcase, soccer tournament that's going on. And I'm like, holy shit. First thing I did is I pull up my phone, I look at Price Labs. I wasn't booked and I raised all my rates by 35%. Then I went into my buy sell trade groups and started posting and, using like soccer hashtags on social and stuff like that and got premium rate with booking. But if you don't have a dynamic pricing tool, 99.9% of us are going to miss those types of compression events, right?
No, 100%. But what's interesting, Bill, I'm glad you mentioned it, is there are compression events that a pricing tool does not pick up on,
Hmm.
which leads us to the manual efforts. So it's really interesting. We can talk all day long about the dynamic tool, but it's really, really in today's climate, very much a manual process. And
If
it's a
you look,
one two punch.
you can own a fucking Maserati or a Bugatti or a Porsche, but if you can't drive a stick,
100%.
don't waste the 300,000 to a million. It's the driver that is maneuvering that vehicle. It's the same thing with what you do, right?
Absolutely. Price Labs, Wheelhouse, Beyond, think of it as a vehicle. Who's driving that vehicle for you? It was 100% okay as an operator, as an owner, as a property manager to do your own revenue. It's absolutely okay to do it, but do it well. If you're going to offload it, if you're going to delegate it out, if you're building out a company, then find somebody that you trust that can handle the pricing and understand the psychology and methodology of that market to best suit your needs and increase your bottom dollar the highest possible way.
So we're coming up on 30 minutes on my 10 to 12-minute podcast. This is great stuff. Give me, I own one property, two properties. I have a dynamic pricing tool. I'm not doing manual adjustments on a daily basis. I'm not doing it twice a day like you've recommended in some places. What's the one or two things that I should focus on to be able to move the needle for my own self-managed dynamic pricing?
A lot of us, Bill, have a tendency to think we should be generating 7 night stays, 6 night stays, 5 night stays at X price. What I recommend everybody to do on day one, and this is an emerging and evolving technique that I've brought into our company just about a month, 2 months ago, is really identify what your annual goal target is. Identify what that is realistically based on top property comp sets and how your mark in your specific property identifies as. Break that down into individual monthly seasonality goals that lead you up to that annual target. Understand
I'm
what
gonna interrupt you real quick. You said seasonality goals, so don't have the same, monthly goal in July as you will in January, correct?
absolutely. And when we talk seasonalities, if you look into Price Labs or Wheelhouse, I am not referring to a 2, 3, 4 month seasonality. I am referring to an individual month as a season. So even if peak season is from Memorial to Labor, I am treating May, June, July, August, September totally different.
Dude, that is such a great point because I think most people think that, like, specifically June and July are exactly the same, and they are not.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yep. So, Bill, Breaking that down into monthly seasonalities and then into weekly and then into nightly, you will find a drastic discrepancy of what every pricing tool is going to price you at and where you should be that correlates to your goal. And this is 90% of the issue.
That's awesome. So, super quick before we go, because I could talk for an hour. I've never done a podcast longer than 45 minutes, actually. But I want to talk about one more thing and how you structure your pricing thresholds based on average market lead time. Like, what's the difference in your minimums? If you have a property that the annual ADR is 500 bucks and your average is 2.7 nights stay, just being purely hypothetical, and you can expand on this however you want. 250 days out, what's your minimum and what are you pricing versus 5 days out? How does that vary?
Yeah, good question. So I definitely so one approach that I always take is one step ahead of competition, one step ahead of the market. So you mentioned 2.9 stays. If the market is telling me that an average length of stay in a market is 3, I am going to be further out at 2. So I'm always trying to draw that booking sooner than the market is calling for. If 250 days, we'll call 250 days average lead time in a market, I'll call that my premium window of booking lead time. I'll create a plus or minus percentage range around that 250, and we'll call that peak booking parameter.
I'm saying that like peak booking time would be like 75 days or 100 days. What are you doing super far out at like 250?
Gotcha. So 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, COVID times, I knew that I'm setting a premium. I used to be the guy that would set the highest rate, would be willing to book last and generate the highest amount. Post COVID, post 2023, it's completely opposite. Now it's more so fine tuned far out future premiums, 5%, 10%, 15%, rather than 30, 40, 50, 60%, and really honed in on the goal monthly seasonality that correlates with your annual target. And that's going to cover further out. As we get inside that lead time, as we get inside that 75 days, I have different touch points. I have inside booking lead time. So we'll create a range between 45 and 75 days where we start modifying discounts, and discounts will be different based on the identity of the property and the market that it's in, and vice versa. Once we get inside 30 days, we're now last minute. Now we're going to adjust. If you're talking about $500 average ADR across the board for this particular property, I may be down to 149, 199 last minute midweek to justify occupancy to get us where we need to be. Bill, I have a $1.5 million property in Destin. I see $2,000 a night in peak season. I take that bad boy down all the way to 249 a night midweek in the off season. It is a top 5% performing property and revenue in Destin.
So I think the big takeaway for everybody, it's kind of like the life plan, that you refuse to build the first 3 meetings in the mastermind. But now you've got it.
I got
Um,
laminated.
people are thinking short-term immediate as opposed to the annualized revenue that Emil is talking about, right? So if you're trying to do $100,000 a year, break that down out of the 12 months. And what I heard you say is you are not moving a 3-night minimum property with 500 ADR to 1,500 a night and 7-night minimums 250 days out like we did in 2020 and 2021.
Not at all.
I still have a tendency to do that, not to that extreme, that far out for probably only about 3 to 5 of my total properties that I own, because those are those dramatic super properties. Everything else, I'm right in line with what you're doing. It might be 10 or 15%, and I'm amortizing that over the year as opposed to trying to make it all in June, July, and August, right? And that is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have an off season, shoulder season where the market is typically generating only 20% occupancy, you need to start asking yourself, how can I be one of those 20% property?
And it well in advance. Don't wait till the
Well,
last minute, right?
and unfortunately, it starts 12 to 14 months in advance. So we
And
have
people
to
don't
be
understand
thinking.
that.
We have to be thinking. I've had clients that have come to me and have gone because we started their properties in March, and April and May were not cut out to what they wanted. Well, we've missed the boat by almost 9 months. So it is a timetable. You have to project 12 to 14 months out. Now is crucial in understanding and mastering and engaging in revenue management for peak season summer of 2025.
So that was that last point I think is super important. If you guys have a peak summer season, you need to have your pricing, your minimums, your cancellation policies optimized now for next summer.
100%.
Awesome, Emil. Thanks for jumping on with me last minute. I know you need to unbutton that top button and get back out to the pool with your kids. How do people find you, Emil, if they're interested in finding out this about the services you offer at Pricing by Mira?
Yeah, Bill, it was an absolute pleasure connecting today. It was great chit chatting, and I look forward to seeing you and talking to you again here in the coming weeks. Best way to reach me is www.pricingbymira.com. It's a quick 2-minute questionnaire, and talk to me, folks. I'm an open book. I'm laid back. I'm informal. If you want to set up a call, that's how you reach me. www.pricingbymira.com. And I look forward to catching up with those that are interested. Or they can always come to your boot camps and join your inner circle to get one-on-one revenue management coaching.
You do know it is 2024. You don't have to say www anymore, right?
I gotta be different. I gotta be different. If I'm the only one saying it, then I'm okay.
Pricingbymira.com. Are you in for Orlando?
I am 85% in. Haven't booked the flight yet,
All
but
right, Emil is going to be my special guest. You heard it here first. He will be there in Orlando at my summer boot camp series that is happening on what is Orlando? That is the
number
18th of September.
yep.
So early bird tickets are going out later this week, actually next week. Depending on when you listen to this, we only have seating capacity for 100 people at this boot camp, and early bird pricing is only $100, which is literally about $1,400 less than what I normally charge for a boot camp. But that's why I'm bringing in people like Emil, because well, this is really going to be focused, this specific one in Orlando, on marketing and revenue management. So hopefully we'll see you guys there. Emil, have a great weekend. Thanks for joining me. I will talk to you soon. Everybody else that's out there, happy hosting. Don't forget revenue management, marketing. Those are the two biggest skill sets that you need to focus on if you want to ascend to the top level. Have a great day, everybody.